Hi, everybody. Welcome to our new episode of Rethink Life. We are, as you guys know, sponsored by the Institute of Metaphysical Science. And let me tell you a little bit about us. Get that?
What?
I did it backwards. All right. So, a little bit about the Institute of Metaphysical Science. We were established in 1959 as the Margaret Laird Foundation, researching, exploring, living, and teaching the science of being and the causal nature of consciousness. You can see our site at www.scientificmetaphysics.org. So, today, what?
Slow down.
I know. I'm just going through that part. All right. So, today we have a really fun episode. And so the episode today is called It's Nothing Till I Call It. And I'm reminded of a story. There are 3 umpires. The first is a junior umpire. And when asked about how he calls balls and strikes, he says, I call it the way I see it. And then we went to the next up umpire, who's an experienced umpire, been calling for, being an ump for a while. And he says, I call it the way I see it. And then we go to the master umpire, and the master umpire says, it ain't nothing till I call it. So today, what we want to look at is it's nothing until I call it, literally. So what does that mean, right? So I want you to imagine a slow motion camera revealing change as flowers gradually opening up, or as a cocoon releasing a butterfly. Infinity, a divine characteristic, includes the basic fact of no repetition or duplication. So imagine that. There's no replication, no duplication, repetition or duplication. And this is evident in human language as a continuous altering from the familiar to the unknown. Now, in Government is Self-Government, on page 31, Margaret Laird writes, change is not destruction or annihilation, but ceaseless creativity. Old things passing away are all things becoming new, expanding in the negative. So as we start our topic today, I want you to know that all of it is based off of Government is Self-Government by Margaret Laird. Looks like this. It's an excellent, excellent book. Not too long, just jam-packed with really good goodies. So that's where we're deriving things from. Government is Self-Government. Welcome, Betty. How are you today?
Fine, thanks.
You got to speak up because I can hardly hear you.
Fine.
Excellent. All right. Okay. So, anything you want to say to preface the episode?
Yeah, well, then the title that we got from that story about the umpires, I just think it applies to every individual. And I think every one of us, sooner or later, has to come to the realization that they are the responsible source of the way their life goes. It's not anyone else. It's not by chance, not by accident. Consciously or unconsciously, you choose every single experience you have, every single one. And the thing that is so important to know is that when you take a look, remember, it ain't nothing till you call it. You're the guy in charge. It's not a tragedy. It's not an accident. It's not a design for failure or for success. It's your choice of living yourself divinely, looking just like this. Just like this. When you have that fact directing your activity, you'll find that things just fall into place for you. because you are actually living as the source of your own experience. Knowledge of facts makes the difference. Okay?
Yeah. So shall we just dive right into the quotes? One
Sure.
thing I want to say is that if you like this, you can give us a heart or a thumbs up. I see a couple of them right now. You can also submit comments, and we will see those comments. They'll be a little delayed. We'll bring them in. We love comments, questions, however you want to participate that way. So I encourage it, and we will just jump in. So in Government is Self-Government, on page 31, Margaret Laird wrote, each individual, I, recognizes that all that he lives outsightfully, he lives insightfully, divinely as himself. All appearances are his own self-expanding, self-perfecting identity. So no matter what it looks like, I think I'm reminded of the story that Margaret shared, I believe, in her 1965 Liverpool seminar, where she was pregnant and she really didn't want to be pregnant necessarily and all of that. But here she was. And her teacher, Bicknell Young, said, this is the only way you can discover what there is up for you for discovering who you are, is to have this experience.
Yep.
And that's kind of what you're talking about. It ain't nothing till you call it, but it's your own divinity, the best way you can see it for what there is for you to discover.
Yeah, and the clue in that story is that every single experience has value for you. So you don't fight with the experience. You take a look. Oh, there's value. What is it? Where am I standing? What can I see here? Because nothing is by accident or chance.
Right.
And the thing that is so unapparent, but is actually the way it is that situations and individuals and opportunities change faster than the speed of light, faster than you can snap your finger.
Right.
And that change is what makes almost the unimaginable possible, because it isn't like an old thing being remade more pleasantly or more pleasing or better looking or whatever. It is that the old is gone, and right now's moment is a brand new what? Right. It never existed before. It's going to be gone as quickly as the other one was. Every moment is a brand new thing. Margaret used to say, every day is a new beginning. Everything's new every moment. Infinity does not repeat itself, and it only occurs once. So there's no improvement. There's no change in divine living. There is perfection present. And this is how it looks. 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 It's always new.
Right. And we have a comment from Ken, until we call it. And then he goes on to say, health,
yes,
money,
yes,
international events.
Yes. The problem with the international events a lot, sometimes with money, sometimes with anything that comes up, is that we think that it's out there somewhere and needs to be changed, needs to be improved, needs to be healed, fixed, organized, managed, etc. None of which is true. My business is not to look as if something were separate from my consciousness and try to fix it. My only job is to be myself.
Right. Right.
Yep.
And in Science and Health, Mary Baker Eddy on page 401, line 16 said, what I term chemicalization is the upheaval produced when immortal truth is destroying erroneous mortal belief.
Yeah. And right now in Margaret's government book on page 31 is another sentence about chemicalization. And it says, this chemicalization or stirring of thought to a change of base is language for the recognition of one's own divine power. Isn't that good?
That is. It's right at the bottom of the first full paragraph. Last sentence.
Yeah, a little more than halfway down the page.
Yep. Yes. So those two things. And then in your book, Betty, Mind is the Athlete, you say all we can ever relate to is a self view, which shows up in the discernible form called others, and the entire spectrum called the language world. That would be the seen, heard, felt, tasted, touched, all of that, the phenomenal world.
Yeah, you got to realize that what you view as others and out there is you saying to yourself, not I. You have something over here that you call I, and everything else is over there, not I. And you have no control and no choice.
Yep.
If what Mrs. Eddy wrote is helpful or true or provable, give it a thought. She says, I am all, and the knowledge of aught beside myself is impossible. So I'm the master of my own stuff. It ain't nothing till I call it.
Right. Right.
Yep.
So where have you been thinking that it has nothing to do with how you call it? And I would challenge you to just look and see, like, okay, what do I have going on? You know, look in your world at all the different things that are happening, unfolding, occurring, all of that. Where is it outside of who you think you are?
Yep.
So in government on page 31 also, Margaret Laird wrote, I discover sooner or later in the language of my discernment that I'm happy, healthy, wealthy, on my own. I am never without purpose or direction, nor do I lack the capacity to cope with any situation intelligently and effectively.
Yeah. And that whole statement is fact, true of every single conscious human individual. The requirement is that you be living consciously. And I mean alert, awake, aware. We all have that going on, but we let it sleep. It's so comfortable to just coast along. And that's why we say, oh dear, because what that looks like is a problem coming up because you're not going to be allowed. You know, I remember a statement that a practitioner told Margaret way back. She was having a problem and it just didn't give up. You know, she had help and she had consultations and she tried so hard to work it all out and it hung around. And finally, this practitioner said to her, God loves you too much to leave you in this belief of yourself. So it's going to hang around till you give up the belief you have of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can get quite acute and it can disrupt all kinds of things sometimes.
Well, you will have it. Yeah, you will have it get acute because you're really, what you're up to is discovering yourself fully. So, you know, you generate whatever it takes. And the experience of value is always what's going on.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And in Science and Health on page 424, line 6, Mary Baker Eddy wrote, we must leave the mortal basis of belief and unite with the one mind in order to change the notion of chance to the proper sense of God's unerring direction. That is the divinity shaping our ends, and thus bring out harmony.
Yep.
Do you want to say anything more about that one?
No, I think that's a pretty well-known statement of hers.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're bringing out harmony, that's the way to, that's the route. That's the path.
Right. Bring out harmony.
Leave the mortal basis of belief and unite with one mind.
Yeah.
period.
So leave alone all the stuff you're seeing going on out there and attributing cause in the picture, and acknowledge
Get
source.
with the facts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And in your book, Mind is the Athlete, on page 127, you say it requires a willingness to look at what's present and a willingness to distinguish between the facts and any emotional, personal, traditional, or educational habits of thought and action. So it takes willingness, and it also takes a lot of original thinking.
Yeah, sure. You know, I looked at the words this time when I was looking at what we were talking about. And, you know, when I talk about personal stuff that you've got going on are your preferences, the things you really want to see happen. You will do a lot to have that occur. And it's nothing compared to being yourself.
Yeah.
Nothing at all. Anything you get the personal satisfaction from is going to be very fleeting. It may be for a moment, but pretty soon you'll be back to, oh, well, I've got to do something here, you know. So give up your preferences, at least identify them. You know, when something repeatedly bugs you, take a look at what it is you're hanging on to that tries to have you be a two-legged animal with a good idea, or looking for a good idea, or wishing for a good idea. Anytime you've got yourself pegged as this thing you see in the mirror, you're going to be missing the boat with discovering yourself.
Right.
So
Right.
those are personal druthers. Then it says traditional or educational habits. And, you know, traditional, that's the way it's always been done. I should do that because, of course, it's always been that way. You know that. Or educational habits, those are the pleasing society approaches. We've been educated to do it that way. That's the proper way to do it. Of course, I should do that. You got to
Right.
give that stuff up if you're going to be yourself. Because
Right.
unless it's you being discriminately you, giving up the druthers and the attachment to the picture and all that stuff, the beliefs that go with the two-legged thing, till that's quiet, really just silently the way it looks, not the way it is. And you begin to acknowledge the way it is. At that point, things happen. New self-discovery occurs. You find that you, in fact, are not limited. You, in fact, do have the capacity to cope with whatever is confronting you.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And the capacity to stand on your own 2 feet, so to speak.
Yep.
Right. All right. So then in Government is Self-Government, on page 32, Margaret Laird wrote, "My own divinity, love, is always present, consciously or unconsciously, in the language of my discernment, exactly how I'm seeing it, to supply my need to grow up, to be self-responsible, self-disciplined, self-governed, and self-fulfilled."
Yep.
So requires a little growing up.
Yeah. And you know what we have put ourselves through in order to grow up? We have to feel threatened, you know, like, oh, I have this deadly thing going on. I'm not going to live very long. What am I going to do? Oh, dear, oh, dear. And I remember a story that Mrs. Laird told of a man who had a cancer. And he called her on the phone. He was a pretty seasoned scientist. And he says, this is what they're saying. And he gave Margaret the full report on the cancer situation. And then he says, what there is for me to do, Margaret, is to walk on, right? And she said, exactly.
Yeah.
And he did. And his freedom was there. Not in trying to fix the cancer, but in walking on as the acknowledgement of the facts of being the best he knew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And in Miscellaneous Writings on page 66, line 4, Mary Baker Eddy wrote, "Hence the gospel that fulfills the law in righteousness of these words in the New Testament. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap."
Yeah, and we read that like it's something that may occur at some point. It's every moment. Every moment. What am I sowing? That's what I've got coming in. If I'm going, I don't like it, take a look. What are you sowing? What are you spreading out there with yourself? What are you believing about yourself? What are you believing about your world that you call others? What are you believing about your self-government that you call politics? What are you believing about your job and the people that work with you? What are you believing about your income, your money supply, your investments, whatever?
Mm-hmm.
It's entirely up to you. Every
Right.
single thing.
Right.
And the thing is, you don't discover that unless you take charge.
Right.
You're not an accident waiting to happen, you know.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. And in Mind is the Athlete, you wrote, "Honesty and identifying pure facts is essential. It is then that we can clearly be at choice with regard to what's present when any issue confronts us."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Well,
So,
honesty in identifying facts. Excuse my phone. I should have turned it off. Anyway, honesty in identifying pure facts is essential. You know, we can't kid ourselves. We might kid the world around us, humanly speaking. We might fool them into not knowing what's really going on, but you don't fool yourself. You do know what's going on. You do know who you are. You do know when you're trying to skip a game with yourself. You also know when the facts are present. So you have to be able to speak to yourself with absolute honesty in order to walk forward free. Yep.
yeah. All right. Now we have a couple extras. So on government, page 32, the quote we have is, "Love provides whatever lessons we may need so that we will look within for our without. The spiritual genius is one who is able to make the unseen the seen."
Yep. And that's important. That's a terrific statement. But when you're right on target with yourself and the facts of science, what you call is the way it is. And
Right.
it ain't nothing till you call it.
Right. And
Yeah.
what does it take to get with the facts? Just acknowledging source, the willingness to acknowledge. I mean, it's willingness, acknowledgement.
And actually living that. I'm not going to do you much good if I say, well, I'm willing to acknowledge facts.
Right.
Well, so what are the facts? I want to live the acknowledgement of facts. You know, here I am with, my hand hurts, my foot hurts. I missed the appointment today. I'm too late to do little, all that stuff we do. Well, what are the facts? Man is the expression of God's being. We live and move and have presence as the reflection of the God idea. So God in action, love in action, principle functioning, truth authorizing, all of that, soul presencing, that's what's going on when this thing shows up that I call Betty, because the divinity is there or there wouldn't be any Betty.
Mm-hmm.
But the Betty isn't 1, 2, 3. to anything. That's just the way things look on the playing game board. What's actually present is a divinity shaping our ends, shaping our activity, shaping who we are, what's being, what's true. It's always present. If I'm present, that's present. Without that, nothing is present. Recognizing it is the game that's up for you.
Right. Right.
Yep.
And in Mind is the Athlete on 137, you wrote, daily, we are confronted by our language world. Are we going to live it from conscious choice or dominated by custom, tradition, and the hapless determination of circumstances and the environment?
Yep. That's
And
the change.
I think it harkens back to chocolate chews.
And it ain't nothing till I call it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to say? And I want to thank everybody for hanging in there, and just know that we are, let's see, we are sponsored by the Institute of Metaphysical Science, and you can find any of the books or the recordings or anything like that at our website. We appreciate whatever support y'all have. We're a nonprofit, and I really want to challenge you to call it, to take the ownership of calling it, of your
Good way to
own
put it.
self-responsibility. Okay. And we will see you next time.
Good night.